far beyond the Arctic Circle. In the desolate tundra of Russia's Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous Okrug lies one of the most brutal and isolated prisons in the world, IK-18, better known as Polar Owl or Polная Sova in Russian. Here, winter stretches for 9 months. Temperatures can plunge to -50 degrees Celsius, and during the polar night, the sun doesn't rise for weeks. The landscape is barren, silent, and frozen, an environment that mirrors the lives of the men confined within. But the freezing climate is only the beginning. What truly makes this prison infamous is its purpose, its regime, and the darkness that lies behind its concrete walls. A prison for the forgotten. IK-18 is not an ordinary correctional facility. It is a special regime prison built specifically for Russia's most dangerous and violent criminals, serial killers, terrorists, organized crime leaders, and those serving life sentences without parole. Opened in 2004, Polar Owl was part of Russia's shift away from capital punishment, when the country placed a moratorium on the death penalty in the late 1990s. The government needed a new place to isolate the worst of the worst. The remote, frozen north offered the perfect location, far from cities, far from society, and far from home. Today, the prison holds around 200 inmates, all men, each convicted of crimes so serious they will never leave. For many of them, Polar Owl is not just a prison, it is a tomb. Arrival, the last stop. When a prisoner arrives at Polar Owl, he already knows what to expect, or at least he thinks he does. The journey itself can take days, often involving multiple trains, vans, and transfers through other penal colonies. The final leg ends on the edge of civilization, where a concrete fortress rises against the icy wind. Inmates are stripped of all personal belongings. They're issued heavy gray prison uniforms and escorted to their cells under tight guard. From this moment forward, their lives follow a rigid, monotonous routine with little variation and even less comfort. Inside the cells are small, about 7 square meters, with thick concrete walls, metal bars, and reinforced steel doors. Each cell holds 1 or 2 inmates, but many request solitary confinement due to fear, mental stress, or violent tendencies. There is no privacy. Cameras monitor every move. A small table is bolted to the floor. The beds are chained upright during the day and only lowered at night. Even bathroom use is constantly observed. The isolation is crushing. Prisoners are forbidden from speaking loudly, singing, or making noise. There are no televisions, no radios, and no social interaction beyond what is absolutely necessary. Daily routine, repetition, and control. Every day is nearly identical. At 6 a.m., the cell lights come on. Breakfast is served through a hatch in the door, typically black bread, porridge, or watery soup. There are no hot meals in the cell. There is no choice. The food is barely enough to maintain weight in such cold conditions. After breakfast, prisoners are inspected. Guards in black uniforms bark commands through the small opening, ensuring obedience through fear and routine. Inmates must stand still during checks, facing the wall, hands behind their backs. The only time prisoners leave their cells is for a 1-hour outdoor walk, but outdoor is a technicality. It takes place in a small concrete pen, about the size of an elevator shaft, open only at the top. Snow often piles at the corners. The inmate walks in circles under silent supervision. Then, it's back to the cell. Lunch. More silence. More waiting. Dinner. Lights out. There is no work, no education, no therapy. Days blur into weeks. Weeks into years. Punishment within punishment. If an inmate violates the rules, even slightly, he may be sent to a punishment cell, known as a shizo. This is a bare, freezing room with no bed, no mattress, and often no heat. Prisoners are given only bread and water and are left alone for days. Guards are trained to maintain strict discipline, but they also face emotional strain. Some former officers have spoken anonymously about the psychological toll of working in Polar Owl, about how silence and tension infect even the staff. There are no smiles, only procedure. The mind begins to break. The biggest threat in Polar Owl isn't violence, it's time. The slow, endless passage of time. With no chance of parole and no meaningful human contact, many prisoners begin to deteriorate mentally. Depression, paranoia, and hallucinations are common. Letters are allowed, but they are censored. Visits from family members are permitted only after many years, and even then, under strict conditions. Many inmates lose all connection to the outside world. For them, Polar Owl becomes reality. The outside world becomes a dream. Infamous inmates. Polar Owl has housed some of Russia's most feared criminals, though their names are not always public. Some have made headlines: serial killers responsible for dozens of deaths, former military officers turned contract killers, and extremists serving multiple life sentences. These men are locked away so tightly that even in Russia, few details leak from inside. What is known, however, is that most of them will die within these walls, often alone and unnoticed. International attention. Human rights. Organizations have criticized Polar Owl and similar facilities in Russia for what they describe as inhumane conditions and psychological torture. The European Court of Human Rights has repeatedly ruled against Russia for violating prisoner rights. The Russian government, however, maintains that such prisons are necessary to protect society. Officials argue that these inmates have committed unspeakable crimes and that they should not be granted comfort or freedom, a life frozen in time. In the end, Polar Owl is not just a prison. It is a place where time stands still, a place where hope fades, and where men live out their final years in silence and snow. It's not just the climate that makes this prison cold. It's the very philosophy behind it. There are no second chances here. Only concrete, steel, and a long, slow descent into oblivion. Some say it's justice. Others call it cruelty. But one thing is certain: once you're inside Polar Owl, you're gone, not just from the world, but from memory.